Attica is not just a prison. It is a warning. Long before anyone sees its walls, the name alone carries weight, whispered with tension, remembered through history, and associated with violence, power, and loss of control. Located in upstate New York, Attica Correctional Facility has stood for decades as one of the most notorious prisons in America. Not because of its size, not because of its security level, but because of what happened here, and what never truly stopped happening afterward. Attica was designed with one priority: control. Thick concrete walls, steel bars, long corridors built for surveillance, not comfort. From the beginning, the prison operated on strict authority. Movement was limited. Communication was restricted. Order was enforced with precision. But beneath that order, pressure was building, quietly, steadily, long before the world ever paid attention. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, life inside Attica had become unbearable for many inmates. Cells were cramped. Medical care was limited. Food was poor. Racial tensions were constant. Inmates felt invisible. Complaints went unanswered. Frustration turned into resentment, and resentment hardened into anger. The prison appeared stable on the surface, but inside, it was already cracking. In September 1971, that pressure finally ignited. What began as a confrontation quickly escalated beyond control. Inmates seized parts of the prison. Guards were taken hostage. The balance of power shifted in a matter of hours. Attica had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Outside the walls, authority scrambled. Inside, tension turned into desperation. For 4 days, Attica became the center of national attention. Negotiations unfolded. Demands were made. Cameras captured images that stunned the country. Inmates spoke openly about abuse, neglect, and inhumane conditions. For the first time, voices from inside the prison were impossible to ignore. But the situation remained fragile. Trust was thin. Fear ruled both sides. On the 5th day, the state made its decision. Armed forces moved in. Gunfire erupted. Chaos consumed the prison yards. When it ended, dozens lay dead, inmates and hostages alike. The retaking of Attica left scars that would never fade. The prison returned to state control, but something fundamental had been broken. In the days that followed, Attica was sealed off. Investigations began. Narratives were shaped. Responsibility was debated. For years, the truth of what happened was buried under reports, lawsuits, and silence. But inside the walls, inmates understood something immediately. Attica would never be the same, and neither would they. Physical damage was repaired. Walls were reinforced. Procedures were rewritten. Security was tightened. But rebuilding concrete did not erase memory. Attica reopened stronger, harder, and more controlled. Not softer, not safer. The riot had ended. The tension had not. After 1971, Attica became a prison defined by prevention. Movement was watched more closely. Communication was restricted further. Force became more visible. Every decision was shaped by fear of another uprising. Attica learned one lesson above all else: never lose control again. New inmates arrived long after the riot ended. Many knew the story. Some felt its presence the moment they entered. Attica carried its past into every cell, every corridor, every interaction between inmate and officer. This wasn't history to those inside. It was atmosphere. Years passed. Decades followed. But reports of violence, abuse, and conflict continued to surface. Inmate-staff relationships remained strained. Trust never fully returned. Attica did not erupt again, but it never relaxed either. Tension lived in the routine. Chapter 12. Daily life under shadow. Daily life at Attica followed strict schedules. Counts. Meals. Limited movement. But every action felt heavier here than in other prisons. Inmates learned quickly that Attica punished mistakes harshly. Officers operated knowing history could repeat itself. Both sides remembered what happened when control was lost. Chapter 13. Power and resentment. Power inside Attica was absolute and constantly tested. Small confrontations carried weight. Disrespect escalated quickly. Grudges lingered. The prison didn't explode into chaos, but it simmered. Always. Chapter 14. Allegations and investigations. Over the years, Attica became the subject of repeated investigations. Claims of excessive force. Reports of abuse. legal battles that stretched for decades. Each case reopened old wounds, reminding the public that Attica's past was never truly buried. Chapter 15. The officers burdened correctional officers at Attica worked under constant pressure. They inherited a prison shaped by tragedy. They carried responsibility for preventing another disaster. Trust was scarce. Stress was constant. Attica demanded vigilance, every hour, every shift. Chapter 16. Fear as a system. Fear shaped Attica's systems. Fear of uprising. Fear of losing control. Fear of repeating history. Rules were enforced rigidly. Discipline was swift. Surveillance was constant. This was not paranoia. It was memory. Chapter 17. Why Attica never escaped its reputation. Other prisons changed. Attica couldn't. Its name was tied to bloodshed, state violence, and unanswered questions. Every incident, no matter how small, was filtered through that history. Attica didn't need riots to remain infamous. Its past did that for it. Chapter 18. The prison and the public. To the public, Attica became a symbol. To inmates, it was reality. The gap between perception and daily life grew wider, but the reputation never softened. Attica remained dangerous not because of chaos, but because of unresolved tension. Chapter 19. A prison frozen in time. Decades later, Attica still operates. New policies exist. New inmates arrive. New officers take posts. But the shadow of 1971 remains. Some places move on from tragedy. Attica lives inside it. Chapter 20. A story that isn't over. Attica's story did not end with the riot. It continued through every shift change, every lockdown, every quiet confrontation. The prison stands, controlled, watched, restrained. But beneath the surface, history still breathes. And as long as Attica exists, its past remains part of its present. Decades after the uprising, Attica remains active. New inmates arrive through the same gates. New officers take posts along the same corridors. The walls still stand, thick, unmoved, unforgiving. Technology has changed. Procedures have evolved. But Attica's core identity has not. The prison still operates under the weight of its history, a place shaped by what once went wrong and what can never be allowed to happen again. Modern Attica relies on routine more than force. Schedules are rigid. Movement is restricted. Counts happen without exception. This structure isn't meant to comfort inmates. It's meant to prevent unpredictability. In a prison where tension never fully fades, predictability becomes survival, for inmates and staff alike. Violence still exists at Attica, but it rarely explodes the way outsiders imagine. Incidents are isolated. Responses are immediate. Lockdowns happen fast. The prison has learned how to suppress escalation before it spreads. Control is applied quietly, efficiently, and without spectacle. Attica does not allow disorder to grow roots. Trust between inmates and staff remains fragile. Every interaction carries history. Every order carries weight. Inmates often view authority through suspicion. Officers operate knowing that respect must be enforced, not assumed. Neither side forgets what happens when communication breaks down. Life inside Attica creates constant psychological strain. The environment is rigid. The expectations are unforgiving. The memory of past violence lingers silently. Inmates learn to manage emotions carefully. Officers learn to remain alert without becoming reactive. Pressure is always present, even when nothing is happening. When inmates cross lines, segregation follows. Movement disappears. Silence replaces noise. Time stretches. Isolation is not designed to punish loudly. It is designed to break momentum. At Attica, segregation is a reminder of how quickly life can shrink inside these walls. As years pass, the population grows older. Some inmates arrive long after the riot but still live under its shadow. Others have spent decades inside these same walls. Aging changes priorities. Strength fades. Survival becomes quieter. Attica is not just a prison for punishment. It is a place where people grow old under control. Medical care at Attica is constant but controlled. Appointments are monitored. Movement is escorted. Security never relaxes. For aging inmates, health becomes a daily concern, layered on top of confinement. The prison manages bodies as carefully as it manages behavior. Death at Attica is not public. There are no announcements, no ceremonies, no pauses. Medical staff respond. Paperwork follows. A cell empties. Life continues without acknowledgement. Attica absorbs death the same way it absorbs everything else, quietly. Many correctional officers spend their entire careers at Attica. They inherit its past. They learn its rhythms. They adapt to its pressure. Years pass. Faces change. The environment remains. Attica shapes those who work inside it as much as those confined by it. The uprising of 1971 did not end in courtrooms. Lawsuits stretched across decades. Investigations reopened old wounds. Settlements arrived slowly and late. Justice, for many, felt incomplete. The legal system moved forward. Memory did not. To the public, Attica is a symbol. To those inside, it is routine. The gap between reputation and reality grows wider with each passing year, yet the name never loses its power. Attica exists simultaneously as history and as a functioning prison. Attica matters because it represents a limit, a moment when control failed, a lesson written in blood, a reminder of what happens when pressure is ignored too long. Every policy change, every security decision, every response to conflict traces back to that moment. Attica's systems are shaped by remembrance. Procedures exist not just to maintain order, but to prevent history from repeating. The prison operates as if the past could return at any moment, because it once did. Living under constant tension has a cost. Inmates carry it mentally. Officers carry it professionally. The institution carries it structurally. Attica functions, but it never relaxes. Attica has changed, but it has not transformed. New rules exist. New oversight exists. New training exists. But the core remains unchanged. Control first. Stability always. Some places bury their past. Attica keeps it close. Every locked door. Every watchtower. Every count. Memory is embedded in the walls. Attica is not chaos. It is restraint. A prison holding itself together through routine, fear, and memory, determined never to lose control again. Attica's story continues daily. Inmates arrive. Officers retire. The gates open and close. History does not repeat, but it never leaves. Attica stands as both warning and institution. A prison shaped by tragedy. A system shaped by fear. A place where the past dictates the present. And before its story can end, one question remains. Can a prison ever truly move on from what it was built to remember? At Attica, surveillance never stops. Cameras observe corridors. Officers watch movement. Counts interrupt the day again and again. This level of monitoring isn't just about safety. It is about control shaped by memory. The prison learned long ago that blind spots invite disaster. So Attica watches everything. And being watched constantly changes how people behave, think, and exist. Silence inside Attica is never neutral. A quiet unit can mean stability, or it can mean something is building. Officers are trained to recognize when silence feels wrong. Inmates learn to sense it too. When conversations stop abruptly, when movement slows unnaturally, attention sharpens. At Attica, silence is often louder than noise. Beyond official regulations, Attica operates on informal rules. Who speaks during count? Who moves first? Who keeps distance? These rules are never written down, but they are enforced socially and instantly. Breaking them can escalate situations faster than breaking official policy. The system relies on inmates understanding these boundaries, because formal control alone isn't enough. Fear is not accidental at Attica. It is embedded. Fear of segregation. Fear of losing privileges. Fear of being misinterpreted. This fear doesn't explode into panic. It settles into routine. It becomes background pressure, guiding behavior quietly. Attica doesn't need constant force. Fear does the work. When incidents happen, they are handled fast. Movement freezes. Units lock down. Individuals are isolated. There is no public explanation. No announcement. No delay. The prison learned that hesitation creates space, and space creates risk. So response is immediate, controlled, and final. Inmates carry Attica's history differently. Some learn it through stories passed down quietly. Others feel it through how officers react to tension. Even inmates who arrived decades after 1971 inherit the consequences of that moment. Attica's past doesn't need to be explained. It's felt. Not every officer stays forever. New staff arrive. Veterans retire. But Attica preserves institutional memory carefully. Training emphasizes history. Procedures reflect old mistakes. The past is taught as a warning, not a lesson to be debated. Even new officers step into roles already shaped by tragedy. Attica operates under the assumption that resistance is always possible. Policies are written to anticipate defiance. Staffing plans account for worst-case scenarios. Emergency responses are rehearsed repeatedly. This expectation does not fade with time. It sharpens. Years inside Attica erode emotion. Anger dulls. Fear stabilizes. Hope becomes cautious. Some inmates adapt by becoming invisible. Others by becoming rigid. The prison doesn't demand emotional collapse. It allows time to accomplish it naturally. Attica is controlled. That does not mean it is peaceful. Order exists. Violence is contained. But peace requires trust, and trust never fully returned. The prison learned to manage behavior, not heal relationships. Even emergencies unfold under control. Medical responses are swift, but security leads every action. Movement is escorted. Doors open and close deliberately. Care happens within limits. At Attica, no situation overrides containment. Not even crisis. As inmates age, so does the institution. Infrastructure strains. Equipment wears down. Procedures are updated cautiously. Attica adapts just enough to function, never enough to forget. Media attention comes in waves. Anniversaries. Incidents. Legal decisions. Then silence returns. Inside Attica, life continues regardless of coverage. The cameras leave. The routines remain. The prison does not perform for attention. Many questions about Attica remain unresolved. Could it have been prevented? Was the response justified? Did anything truly change? The prison offers no answers. It simply continues. Operating under constant alert has consequences. Fatigue sets in. Tension accumulates. Mistakes become dangerous. But Attica cannot afford to relax. Its past forbids it. Emergency drills assume loss of control. Scenarios imagine worst outcomes. Preparation centers on containment after breach. Attica does not train for optimism. It trains for survival. Chapter 57. What the walls absorb over decades. The walls absorb everything. Shouts. Silence. Fear. Regret. The building itself becomes a record, holding what people try not to remember. Other prisons may be larger. Some may be newer. But Attica feels different because it remembers. The institution behaves like something that has been wounded, careful, guarded, and unwilling to trust itself again. Attica does not build toward release. It builds toward stability. And stability here means tension managed, not eliminated. The pressure remains, controlled, contained, but present. At Attica, planning assumes failure before success. Every policy, every drill, every response is written with one question in mind. What if control breaks? This mindset shapes everything. It turns caution into instinct, and instinct into culture. Attica doesn't hope for calm. It prepares for collapse. For inmates, pressure is constant but rarely visible. There are no obvious warning signs, no countdowns, no release valves. The pressure builds quietly, through routine, restriction, and the knowledge that history is never forgiven here. Some inmates internalize it. Others resist it silently. But no one escapes it. In most prisons, small arguments fade. At Attica, they are monitored closely. A raised voice. A delayed response. A group standing too still. Staff are trained to notice patterns, not incidents. Because at Attica, history taught one lesson clearly. Escalation rarely announces itself. Discipline at Attica is firm, immediate, and rarely debated. There is no room for ambiguity. Consequences are applied swiftly. Explanations are minimal. This approach is not about punishment. It's about preventing momentum. The prison does not allow situations to grow. The yard at Attica carries weight. It was here that control once vanished. Here that chaos spread. Here that history was written in blood. Even now, movement is calculated. Supervision is constant. Numbers are controlled. The yard is no longer a place of release. It is a reminder. Some inmates survive by becoming invisible. They speak little. They move predictably. They avoid attention. At Attica, visibility can feel dangerous. So disappearance becomes a strategy. Not escape, but endurance. Authority at Attica is not built on trust. It is built on structure. Orders are given without warmth. Compliance is expected, not negotiated. This distance protects the system, but it also hardens it. Attica functions efficiently. Human connection is secondary. Anniversaries of the 1971 uprising bring heightened alert. Extra staffing. Increased surveillance. Zero tolerance for deviation. The past is not commemorated. It is guarded against. Attica remembers by preparing. A prison that never forgets also never relaxes. Fatigue becomes normal. Stress becomes routine. Hypervigilance becomes culture. For both inmates and staff, this constant alert reshapes behavior over time. Attica doesn't erupt. It endures. Even healthcare at Attica operates under tension. Appointments are brief. Movement is escorted. Privacy is limited. Care exists, but always inside control. The body is treated. The environment never softens. Some inmates arrive without knowing Attica's history. They learn quickly. Not through stories, but through atmosphere. The way officers respond. The way inmates move. The way silence feels heavier here. Attica teaches without explanation. Attica does not rely on force to change people. It relies on time. Days repeat. Choices shrink. Resistance loses momentum. Behavior adjusts, not because of hope, but because of exhaustion. Veteran officers don't watch faces. They watch posture, pacing, noise levels. They learn to read the air itself. At Attica, prevention happens before language. Other prisons may be stricter. Some may be newer. Some may be larger. But Attica feels heavier. Because every rule carries memory. Every response carries fear of repetition. This weight never leaves. Attica does not celebrate milestones. No anniversaries. No acknowledgements. No closure. Time passes without recognition. The prison does not look back fondly. It looks back cautiously. Reforms have come and gone. Policies change. Training improves. Oversight increases. But reform cannot erase memory. Attica adapts. It does not forget. Eventually, many inmates stop expecting anything different. Not release. Not reform. Not relief. Expectation fades into routine. And routine becomes survival. Attica is not designed to inspire. It is designed to survive. Every wall, policy, and procedure exists to absorb shock, not emotion. It does this well. Attica does not offer redemption narratives. There are no symbolic fresh starts. No new identities. Only containment. The system holds and moves on. Attica still stands. Not as a relic. Not as a warning sign alone. But as a functioning prison shaped permanently by what once happened inside its walls. The story has not ended. It is still waiting. Attica still stands, not because it moved on, but because it never allowed itself to forget. Behind its walls, control remains constant, shaped by memory rather than hope. Every procedure, every watchful pause, every measured response exists for one reason: to ensure that what happened here once never happens again. This prison does not seek forgiveness. It does not offer closure. It does not tell a story of redemption. It simply endures. Inmates continue to arrive and adapt to a system built on restraint. Officers continue to work within a structure defined by vigilance. The routines repeat, steady and unyielding, day after day. Attica's past is not behind it. It is built into it. And as long as these walls stand, the prison remains what history made it, a place where memory governs the present, and the future is shaped by a single, unforgotten lesson: control is never optional. This is Attica.